our programs are open to anyone without regard to any legally protected class. We hope that you feel welcome, and if you feel that you are not, you are welcome to reach out to us, our college, or to USDA to report complaints. And just to let everyone know, we are going to record this presentation and we are going to share it on the HGIC YouTube channel so that you can see it later on. And we'll put that link in the chat as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. Please welcome Dave Foreman.
All right, rolling chairs here. Good morning, everybody, or actually, good afternoon. Yeah, this should be a fun little seminar today. We're gonna talk about mushrooms, and I like mushrooms. I like fungi, so I generally talk about diseases. So this is a little more positive, you know. So we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna do the intro and kind of introduce fungi and give you some background. Some of you, this might be a review for some of you, but I just want to bring everybody up to speed. And then we'll have Chen Wen going over some of the production and Shuang going over maybe some of the economics that you guys might be interested in. So we can just start right out with fungi being a large group. Actually, they have their own kingdom now. This is when I studied fungi years ago, they were considered plants. And so we've moved them out of that kingdom into their own kingdom. And so there's a lot of, obviously, there's almost 5 million, probably more than that, million species. Only about 5% are even, been classified or named. Most of these are associated with soil and probably soil microbiomes and things like that. But there's new ones being named and discovered all the time, and so when we keep up with some of these things, it's just an amazing group. They have an awful lot in common with insects. Actually, they have chitin in there. I'll go over that a little bit later. They have chitin in their cell walls, so they actually have a cell wall actually has chitin in it. So that's one of the reasons why you can't really overcook mushrooms. They have a tough sort of skeletal structure almost, and so they collapse, but they don't really go to mush like you would like a vegetable. So not all fungi obviously produce mushrooms. So that's important to recognize. So that mold in the back of your refrigerator, those are usually not the mushroom forming kind of fungi. So there's just a subset that actually produce what we call mushrooms, or this fruiting body that's, it's either gilled or pored. It usually has a stalk sometimes. And so there's all different colors, there's all different shapes, sizes, and so forth and so on. And so that makes identification kind of tricky. Depending on the substrate that they grow on, sometimes will determine the color or the size, depending on the nutritional value of that substrate. And so, yeah, with about 20,000 species, maybe 200 have been tried, for cultivation, and we're still trying others, but only about 20. And that's even generous. 20 are really commercially produced, and there's far fewer than that that are actually the big sellers. So it makes a difference, with sort of, how we talk about these things. And it's critical that we sort of use the mushrooms that have been tried and sort of proven so that we can get, success with this, especially when you're first starting out. So again, in North America, most of you are probably familiar with the button mushroom, or what I call a button mushroom. It's an agaricus species. And then from that, typically they've branched out to the cremini, which are really just small portobellos. Okay, so portobellos are the larger ones here, and that's what this one is in the picture. It's a portobello. And so that makes up about 92% of all of the mushroom production. And guess where most of the production is? It's actually right close by It's in northern Maryland and southern Pennsylvania. And that's where the whole sort of mushroom industry sort of started commercially back in the early 40s and, sort of early 50s, that period of time. And it was an Italian family, some Italian brothers that basically learned how to cultivate mushrooms. And guess why they settled, in that area? It was because of the horse manure. And so that is the substrate that grows primarily 92% of all the mushrooms that you guys consume. And that's important because obviously, then where do they get the horse manure? It's the Amish. And so that whole horse industry and Maryland's horse industry and so forth, it was horse manure. Basically, they got this whole thing started. And it's a very specific process. I have a picture of it later. So it's a little bit different from the specialty mushrooms that we're going to talk about. So theoretically, you could take your portobello mushrooms and take a little slice off the stem and you could cultivate that. Okay. It would be a little bit more work than some of you will want to do, but you could do that. But then to produce mushrooms, you would have to use that specialty method with the horse manure and the compost and stuff like that. So it's not something that we produce as a specialty mushroom, product, and it would not be something you would probably do either. So again, just to differentiate that, although 92% or better is probably grown, and sold, it's the specialty mushrooms that are sort of gaining the interest now, and they're the ones that I think for hobbyists and people like master gardeners, and even people who maybe would want to dabble in this and maybe do commercial eventually or something like that would probably be more interested in. So the specialty mushrooms that are pretty common that you're going to start to find, I think you can find these now in some of the more upscale grocery stores, are obviously the shiitakes. The shiitakes, you can grow those on logs, okay, outdoors. You can leave them outside. It's a little, when you grow them on the logs, you're basically relying on Mother Nature to control the timing and so forth. You can also grow shiitake in culture, and then you get a little better yield. You get a little bit more, you know, reliable harvest out of them, but they do take a little bit more work than some of these others. This one in the picture is an oyster mushroom. Oyster mushroom, if you're going to start with any mushroom, I would start probably with the oyster mushrooms. Uh, and that's because they are the sort of the easiest and the fastest to grow. And they come in different colors. We can show you some different colors later. This happens to be a blue one, what they call a blue oyster. And you can see it's in actually like a crate, like you'd have like a produce crate, and it's growing in straw. So it's a very easy mushroom to grow. So you can grow this on straw, you can grow it on coffee grounds, you can grow it on toilet paper. You can grow it on cardboard, shredded paper, all of those kinds of materials. It's just a very generalized decomposer, okay, that utilizes cellulose. Okay. And then going off some more, we have some lion's mane. We're actually going to show you some lion's mane. That's a little bit more of a wood decomposer. Chestnut mushrooms, which are wood. Maitake, wood. Reishi is the Ganoderma. That's actually a plant pathogen, but it also will grow in culture. And so that's you typically are going to make an extract or powders out of that. Cordyceps is actually a pathogen on insects. It grows, on insect bodies and things like that. So it needs a different substrate. It's not a wood substrate, for example. And there's a few others, obviously, that are, that come and go here too. And so if you're going to probably start somewhere or looking to start somewhere, I'd probably try oysters first. And, I would probably start with, one of the readily available strains that you could probably get as a kit. And then eventually, maybe as you work up to your expertise levels, then you can begin to make your own media, or switch around the media and stuff like that, and maybe control your own production that way. But certainly, if I were going to start with one, oysters, if you want to start the ones outside on the log, shiitake, is easy. And so those two probably would be a good gateway drug to start with. Just a reminder that mushrooms, it's this mycelium, or all these threads that basically grow through the media or on the substrate. They look like little threads. They're actually, hyphae, what we call hyphae, that grow, and they continue to sort of grow through the whole media. And this is what you're going to do when you inoculate, for example, your initial bag, or if you're doing your own inoculations, you have to inoculate with a particular strain of mycelium. All right. And by that, and it's important to, keep it clean and follow. We'll go over some of the, sort of the procedures to kind of keep things, from getting contaminated. Uh, you have a choice. You can put, your mycelium like on the top of a bag or something like that, or you can mix it in thoroughly through the bag. And through research and so forth, both of them catch up to each other, but you'll get a faster fruiting if you actually mix it through the bag, because it just has more of a chance to actually infect or grow throughout the whole media. It will grow down through the top if you're just inoculating it. It may save a little time, but again, if you can mix it up in your media, you're going to save a little time. I do mention here the cell walls contain chitin, like an insect exoskeleton. So it's a little bit of a rigid cell wall. And the way they absorb their nutrients is basically through absorption. So they have enzymes and so forth that are excreted from the mycelia into like the media, and then they basically passively then absorb those nutrients, through their cell walls. That means they're heterotropic. That's a big word, but it means they can't produce their own food. They're not photosynthetic. Okay, so they do need a substrate. They do need an outside source. So typically, when we use like a wood, feeding mushroom or wood decay mushroom, we're going to mix something like wood pellets. Okay, like the kind you can buy for your fireplace or indoor, grills and so forth. You can buy that, and then you're going to actually add another source, like a nitrogen source. So we would use like soybean hulls, but you could use cornmeal, just a little bit more nutrition to get them to grow a little bit faster. Okay. And then that's going to be what your substrate is, as far as the actual colonization. And remember, just not all fungi produce mushrooms. So your contaminants will get in, and they won't form mushrooms, but they'll be growing on the surface. So it's important to differentiate between those. So the word mushroom, you've heard the word toadstool, mushrooms, these are just sort of common names for what we talk about as far as the fruiting body. If you look at these mushrooms here, they're young, and you can tell they're very young because the gills haven't been exposed yet. And again, when you're shopping for mushrooms or when you're harvesting mushrooms on your own, you want to collect them when they're young. And then as they age, they'll break that veil. There's a thin membrane there, and they'll actually then reveal the gills. By the time they reveal the gills, they're going to start, depositing spores, which is their main job. But then the quality, does go down. They become less firm. It becomes less desirable. They won't keep as long. So when you're is the term toadstool versus, there's a lot of colloquial names for, the fruiting structure of these fungi. Just means that, it's this shape. Okay. And then it's this is really the reproductive unit of the organism. Okay. So its main job is to produce spores, which are like seeds. Okay. And they're very small and they're carried by air currents and so forth around. So again, the better quality, or when you're buying mushrooms, the best quality are the younger mushrooms that haven't opened yet. And the older ones, and stews and things like that. But if you're gonna use more of the, I wouldn't say fresh, but if you're gonna use them, for like stir fries and things like that, you want the younger mushrooms. So again, selecting the substrate becomes a means, it's whatever is convenient. Okay, so I like this picture because these are oyster mushrooms growing on a toilet paper roll. Okay, so this is an easy way to inoculate, for mushrooms. You just fill up the center hole, okay, with your mycelium, and then it'll colonize, the entire toilet paper roll. The nice thing about something like this, when you think about it, is that it's fairly sterile. It's not perfectly sterile, but it's fairly sterile. And that's one of the bigger problems we have with mushroom production is the pasteurization of the media before we actually inoculate so that we don't have too many competitors. So when we have something like this, or like shredded paper, or even the wood pellets, are fairly clean. They don't have a lot of contaminants that we have to worry about. So you can actually, do this. And so again, oyster mushrooms aren't as picky. So they can actually, grow on a lot of different kinds of substrates. Ecologically, in the forest and so forth and so on, mushrooms are cleaning up a lot of our wood debris and things like that, and leaves and twigs and so forth, in the forest floor, and recycling those nutrients. So again, they digest their food with enzymes, and then they basically then absorb those nutrients in the end. I just want to mention also some of the benefits of some of these fungi for other plants. So these fungi have evolved, certain ones have evolved with their hosts. And these are the ones you see popping up sometimes in your yard or the lawn and so forth. They'll pop up overnight if we have some rain, maybe this weekend if we get some rain. They're called mycorrhizal fungi, and that means myco is fungus and then rhizal is root. So they grow around the surface of the plant roots, and almost 80% of our plants, a good percentage of our plants, even herbaceous plants, even vegetables sometimes, will have mycorrhizal relationships. One of the most famous mycorrhizal relationships are, with orchids. Orchid seeds, for example, will not even germinate without the right mycorrhizal relationship. And so these are beneficial. It's a beneficial partnership. And the fungus actually serves as a network to gather, nutrients and water and extra minerals for the health of the plant. And in return, then the plant will have extra carbohydrates and so forth through the root system, for the fungus. So it's a beneficial relationship. It's not a pathogenic relationship. So that's a little bit different. So again, these are interesting relationships that we take advantage of. I'll go over some of the more expensive mycorrhizal fungi here in a minute. Again, that we rely on because we can't cultivate or we can't culture or produce them artificially yet. So again, there's research going on to get, we're not successful with all types of mushrooms, just certain ones right now. So we're working on more, ways to produce some of these mushrooms. This is the production system I alluded to earlier in Pennsylvania, and you can see there are shelves of about 8 inches or so deep of mushroom compost, which is actually a nice way of saying horse manure. So basically, you take a whole bunch of horse manure, you mix it with straw, you have to pasteurize it. They do that with steam. They introduce steam into the pipes. there's pipes underneath here, and then they pasteurize this. They cap it with like a tarp or plastic, and then they inoculate that pasteurized substrate. And then by a series of temperature and CO2 exchanges, air exchanges, in other words, they then get the mushrooms then to form the mushrooms are the fruiting bodies. So you can see where they can go in and they can just take a knife or a harvesting tool and basically then collect, all of the mature mushrooms at one time and so forth, and then basically get a substantial harvest. Again, you can't replicate this. This is not something you're going to do out in your garage or your shed or whatever. This is something that was developed again for these types of mushrooms. Again, the portobellos, the button mushrooms, and creminis and so forth. I just want to point out, Chen Wen and Xuan should be proud of this. I mean, in China, there are over 10 mushroom institutes with, multiple scientists, hundreds of scientists studying mushrooms. And so in the Asian cultures and other cultures, mushrooms are a very important part of their either diet or their medicinal, choices and things like that. So again, there's only one university, that's Penn State, that really has a department that's dedicated to mushroom culture. And again, it's for the button mushrooms. And then they're branching out as well as us. So Cornell, Maryland, Illinois, Mississippi, New York, Utah, North Carolina, we're all sort of getting into some of the specialty mushroom production uh, sort of techniques and trying to work out better ways than to commercialize those and also bring up the awareness for like farmers markets and things like that so that people can get more access to some of these different kinds of mushrooms. And they do taste different. They're each one has a little bit different flavor and so forth. We have to stress, even as master gardeners, when you buy a kit or anything, you have to be clean when you're dealing with these cultures. And the green growth in this picture is a contaminant. This is either penicillium or trichoderma, which will kill the culture. It'll overgrow the mushrooms that are in your bag or in your system, and will actually then destroy it. So when you see, a bag that actually has a spot of green on it, or if you have like a culture, you can try to cut that off. But again, try to harvest those mushrooms as quickly as possible because that contaminant will overgrow and overtake your mushrooms. So the first rule is, creating healthy cultures. And again, Chen Wen and so forth is going to go over how we pasteurize our starting media, our starting mycelium, growth choices. And it's going to differ between which media we use. Again, that's why like toilet paper rolls are pretty easy. They don't require a lot of pasteurization. Coffee grounds, if you're gonna use coffee grounds, I know on the internet and so forth, you read about that. Coffee grounds are probably the most difficult because they're so rich in nutrients that you tend to get more contaminants, with something like that versus your paper products or straw or something like that. That's a little more it has less external organisms on it. So again, once we inoculate with clean mycelium, we get good colonization. Then we have to create an environment, for fruiting. So you have to change the conditions. Once you inoculate, you're going to let that colonize, right, through the bag or through your media. And then you have to change conditions to actually form, the mushrooms. So that's what is illustrated here. We've got oyster mushrooms. This is a pink oyster. And the old adage that you grow mushrooms in the dark and feed them, you know what? doesn't really apply for specialty mushrooms because you need the light and you need the temperature, controls to get good mushrooms. And the reason for that is light actually is involved with the formation of the fruiting body. So if you have low light, in other words, you have to have enough light that you could read a book without, too much trouble. But if you have like dim light or inconsistent light, you'll actually have them stretch and they'll be smaller. Okay, so it's important to have some light. You'll also get better nutrition. You'll get better vitamins. You'll get better, amino acids and things like that with light. So, and Chen Wen will talk about this. You'll actually, once the bag has been colonized, like a bag like this, or if you have a tub, you'll do the same thing. You'll lift the lid or you'll cut a slice into the side of this bag. Doesn't have to be very big. That will allow gas exchange and change the dynamic of the CO2 levels and the oxygen levels. And believe it or not, if you put these bags in an enclosed area with no ventilation, they will actually warm the whole area up to about 85 degrees or so. It's actually a respiring, very active, growing system. So you do have to have air exchange. Okay, so when you make the slice, you're going to allow oxygen. That's going to direct oxygen to that portion of the colony, which will then push out the fruiting body through the slices. And if you have enough air exchange, you'll have fresh air then to keep the CO2 levels below 1,000 parts per million. Actually, oysters are a little more sensitive. They need it below 800 parts per million. But you have to keep that. And if you don't do anything, you're going to go up into the thousands of parts per million. Okay. So you'll be 5,000, 6,000 parts per million, and that will stunt again the growth. So a lot of times people will say, "Oh, my bag isn't producing, full-size mushrooms or whatever." Again, you have to look at the air exchange and the humidity. So when we actually grow in a place that I'm going to show you later, we're going to control the humidity to be about 85% or so. Okay, not necessarily drippy, but 85%, it's really humid. Okay. And you're going to actually then get the best fruiting possible, at that stage. So again, those are the parameters you kind of have to watch for. And, sort of you're going to have to adjust those based on your location and your temperature and, what you're growing it in and so forth. I couldn't talk about mushrooms without talking a little bit about some of the mycorrhizal mushrooms that we can't yet culture. So things like truffles, for example, things like porcinis, things like chanterelles, things like morels. We can't culture those yet. So these are the more expensive mushrooms because we have to go out and forage for these in the wild, right? We can't grow these just at will. Truffle mushrooms, just as an aside, we've got a few truffle mushrooms going here in Maryland, trying different strains. We have a strain from Canada that's will hopefully tolerate, our cooler. Although with climate change, hopefully it'll maintain itself. It doesn't like warm weather, but it doesn't like freezing weather. So the truffle industry is kind of like from Maryland and so forth, maybe a little bit north of here, going down south through Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. And actually there are many species of native truffles. We just haven't utilized them. Most of the people are familiar with the European truffles. And those are the expensive ones, that you have to order, and they come in usually around, late November through December through January into February, March. Those are from Europe. They're a European strain. We can grow some of the European strains here, but the problem is we get colder than Europe typically. And so if the ground freezes, then it's going to destroy the truffle. And truffles are usually just below the surface. They're pretty shallow. And that's also why they're not visible necessarily. So that's why you need an animal to find them. So we use dogs. In the old days, they used, male pigs. It's actually the scent of the truffle that mimics like a female pig's hormones and estrogen and so forth. Kind of complicated, but dogs are perfectly fine. So that's one of the reasons we're sort of working on that. There's actually a pecan truffle. The pecan growers down in Georgia and so forth are actually looking for a way to actually get double, harvest and so forth. So again, just another thing that we're kind of looking at and can be maybe, but we can't grow them yet artificially. We have to harvest them from a tree. When you get into nutrition and some of the medicinal uses of mushrooms, this again is a big area. Our own Johns Hopkins, for example, here in Baltimore, has been experimenting with some of the byproducts of mushrooms for depression and some of the mental illness disorders, and working out dosages and so forth for that. Um, some people will take mushroom extracts, and this again, if you're growing mushrooms commercially, this is something that is giving you more added income. So you can grow mushrooms, for example, and dehydrate them, either put them, grind them up completely into a powder, or you can extract, mushrooms with different extraction techniques and get, a tincture. And so a tincture is basically what's been extracted. And a lot of these things have, different kinds of compounds in them. And so again, one of our um, fellow mushroom persons, actually had headache problems and so forth, and is taking some mushroom extracts to help with that. Different people have used mushroom extracts for sinus infections and things like that. So in Asia, this is where they're actually putting a lot more emphasis. They're looking for more of these things. Okay, and so Western medicine is sort of catching up, and again trying to just experiment with some of these different kinds of species and different kinds of profiles as far as what's beneficial. And again, I just mentioned this. I'm not giving out medical advice, um, but again, these are all being looked at, in the medical profession right now as far as different kinds of possibilities for us. Certainly some of these things are antimicrobial, antiviral, and so forth, and anti-inflammatory, and so forth. So again, they have to be worked on. Don't just eat the mushroom and or dose yourself. Just be careful. Work with healthcare professionals. But again, these are things that are being worked on. These are the mushrooms I usually am talking about to you guys. So this happens to be what we call the reishi mushroom or Ganoderma. And so it's a parasite, but we can also grow it, in culture on wood pellets and things like that. This one is has medicinal properties. They can make it into tea, and they can make it into a powder and so forth, do extracts. So it's a very common mushroom, and there are different strains, of this mushroom. But you can see this mushroom, growing on trees. It's a plant pathogen. Some of these cultivated mushrooms, like this one is the lion's mane, or in nature, we have different species. We have bear's head, lion's mane, we have coral, um, uh, fungi and things like that. They're all kind of related. They're tooth fungi, so that as they mature, they actually form these little teeth, and that's where the spores are released. They can live on, again, they can decompose wood as a food source along with some nitrogen. And you can basically then get a harvest out of these. So again, this is a kind of a cool one. I would go with this one second after, oysters. It's really an easy one to grow. We've got three flushes on the currently on the bags that we're growing now, so we can show you some of that. But it's again grown for some of its medicinal properties as well. And again, I'm not advertising this or anything like that, but there are mushrooms obviously being used for other, you know, um, medical purposes. This one happens to be shaga. This one grows on birch trees, so you actually get it from Europe, typically, Northern Europe. It's a specific pathogen of birch. So it's a plant pathogen, but it grows this conch or this growth on the side, and then they grind it up and they extract it and so forth. Um, so again, you can dry your own mushrooms. You can do all this kind of good stuff, and work within those parameters. This I thought was interesting. In the future, I think there's going to be more engineering done with mushrooms. So the Penn State Ag Engineering Department is working on this, as well as other groups are starting to work on this as far as building materials. So they actually colonize a substrate, and then they use like a form that the mycelium grows over, and then it's a dense mycelium, something like a Ganoderma or shiitake or something like that. And then when the mushroom mycelium actually is cured or dried and maybe treated, it can actually form a skeletal, structure that's lightweight, fairly strong in tensile strength, has pretty good tensile strength. And so they're experimenting with some of these things for parts. And I know up at Penn State, they're doing even furniture with some of this kind of stuff. This happens to be they're trying to make a column, I guess, out of this for a building and so forth. So I thought that was pretty cool. Mycotextiles, you can actually take the mycelium, and if you roll it and sort of process it, you can get sheets of this material, and then you can actually treat it like fabric. And so you can make hats and coats and so forth out of it. People are experimenting with that kind of stuff. And bioremediation. Bioremediation means that these and that's true for most of these fungi. They are bioaccumulators. So you have to actually use clean media. You want to make sure your substrate is you know pretty clean and sort of natural, because what they do is they actually accumulate heavy metals and things like that. So you can actually take these, mix them with a soil, for example, or perhaps a structure that has had contamination in the past. So you have fungi that will actually degrade plastics, that will actually certain, again, you have to look at the strains, the plastics, petroleum-based products, things like that, that actually, and heavy metals, they'll actually, decompose those, they'll accumulate them, and then you can either collect them and dispose of them that way, or you could harvest, those materials back once you basically digest the mycelium away, and maybe recycle that material. So again, that's another use for some of these different kinds of mushrooms and cultures and so forth. This would not be used for food, but again, another idea, with using fungi in a different way. And last but not least, I want to just caution everybody again, make sure you know what you're eating. Don't collect from the wild unless you're really, really, been trained. If you're growing something and it comes out a different color or something, don't assume that that's safe. Make sure that you're actually identifying these things properly, and you don't want to make an error or mistake and so forth and so on. I mean, so just be aware. Again, this is why we tell people not to eat wild mushrooms typically, because we don't want them misidentifying, these things. But again, even when you're culturing them, make sure that you're paying attention to what they should look like, and what the actual outcome should be. I think that's it for me. Yeah, I think that's it. So we're going to go to Chen Wen now.
Hi everyone, I'm Chen Wen. I'm the Urban Agriculture Production Specialist here at SAMRAC. So Dave, me, and Sean, we are the mushroom collaborators here, and we had a small mushroom research trial to cultivate the mushroom by ourselves. And I'm going to share how we grow the mushroom here. So Dave just talked about that. The mushrooms are heterotrophic. Um, Unlike plants, they do not have chlorophyll. Apparently, they're not in green colors, so they cannot photosynthesize the carbohydrates by themselves. And then they will need to get the carbon cells from outside. So like human beings, we have meals every day. We try to get carbon, nutrients such as nitrogen, and water from meals. So the meals for the mushroom is called the mushroom growth substrate. And here is our recipe to make the meals for mushroom. So our recipe is we use 2.25 pounds of soy hull. The soy hull is a nitrogen source. I believe the soy hull also provides some carbon, but the thing is the carbon to nitrogen ratio of the soy hull is lower than the wood pellets. So here, soy hull is the mainly nitrogen cells for the mushroom, while the wood pellets is mainly the carbon cells for the mushroom. So wood pellets also has the nitrogen. It's just it has less nitrogen than the soy hull. So we will need 2.25 pounds of soy hull and 2.25 pounds of wood pellets. So it's basically 1-to-1 ratio, and then we will add 7 pounds of water. So water is very essential in mushroom. If you purchase any like fresh mushroom from the grocery store and you try to squeeze it, and you can see the water come out. So most of the component of the mushroom are actually water. The reason we use soy hull also includes that it's loose and bulky, and it maintains good air circulation and also maintains a good moisture content. So both the circulation and air circulation and moisture are essential for healthy mushrooms. So here what we do is we add the three things together in the mushroom bag. The mushroom bag is a plastic bag. It's very durable, as shown here. So we add everything in the mushroom bag and use our hand, give them a little bit of massage to break everything down and try to make sure they're just in like 3 to 5 inches of size. And then we fold the bags like here, and then we load them in the Bob's barrel. So when we load the bags in the Bob's barrel, we wanted to make sure the openings are face down to prevent any leakage in the future. So the next step is to sterilize the mushroom growth substrate. We human beings, we cook our food every day because we eat healthy and safe food. And so do mushrooms. So that's why we will need to cook the foods for the mushrooms to make sure their foods are also safe and healthy. So the equipment we use here is Bob's barrel. As you can see, it's a large capacity and can fill lots of mushroom grow substrate bags here. You don't really have to have this at your home. You can buy steam pot from any of the grocery stores, and it's only $20. And it comes with a steam basket in it. So what you can do is you can put the grow substrate on the steam basket and then steam the growth substrate in your steam pot. it's very similar because the theory is to use the water steam that is generated by heating the water. It can reach to high temperature, and we use that high temperature to clear any seeds and the pathogen in the mushroom growth substrate. So here, I just want to go over the Bob's barrel. So here we load all the mushroom bags in the Bob's barrel. And there is a hole at the back of the Bob's barrel. That's where we connect to the water. So once we load the water in the Bob's barrel, the Bob's barrel will automatically shut down when the bottom is filled up with the water. So it's convenient. And then we start the Bob's barrel. It can reach the temperature of 200°F. It's pretty high. And the sterilization is 18 hours. So when you do a small batch or a small load in your own home, you can cook them for around like 30 minutes to an hour. That should be enough. So here you can see when we cook the mushroom growth substrate, this is a steam comes outside, and the steam is the same we use to kill any pathogen in the growth substrate. So another good thing about the Bob's barrel is you can adjust the temperature and the time anytime. It really depends on how much loads of the growth substrate that you want to sterilize. If you don't have a full load of the growth substrate, you can definitely decrease the temperature or reduce the time. So once the Bob's barrel will only start counting the time once they reach the desired temperature. And after the sterilization cycle completes, they will automatically shut down. But when you cook at your home, you will need to keep an eye on how long you're gonna sterilize your growth substrate. Don't leave it cooking on your stove top. So after the Bob's barrel shut down, we usually give them like 20 hours to let everything cool down inside before we get the growth substrate out. Or we wait until the internal temperature of the growth substrate is below 75 degree Fahrenheit. And there is actually a thermometer here on the Bob's barrel, and this is where you can monitor the real-time temperature. But when you cook at the home, it's very hard to monitor the temperature, but make sure you see the water has bubbling. So once the growth substrate is ready, it's clean, it's safe, then we can inoculate the growth substrate with the mushroom green spot, which means the food is ready for the mushroom. So we purchase the mushroom green spot from vendors. Like Dave said, you can do this with portobello, cut the stem and make the spots by yourself, but it's very complicated. So when you purchase from vendors, there are lots of options. Depends on what you want to grow. You can buy oysters, lion's maize, and also other kinds of mushroom shiitakes. Dave just said we try to. Dave just said the oyster one is easier to grow, so you can start trying oyster first. So remember, we sterilize the mushroom growth substrate so it's clean. So when you inoculate, you wanted to make sure other things are also clean. Like you wanted to make sure your hands are clean. Try to clean your hands with alcohol. Or you wear gloves and also wipe the gloves with alcohol. And also change the gloves if it's broken or it's contaminated. And also make sure the working space that you try to inoculate the growth substrate is also clean. And also make sure the tools that you are going to use is also clean. So the picture here shows Dave is talking about how to inoculate the growth substrate in a biosafety hood here. This one, it has a UV light on the top and it can sterilize the surface with the UV light. You don't really have to have a biosafety hood at your own home. You can have a small table and make sure you clean the surface of the table with alcohol pad or alcohol. Try to make sure everything is clean. So the recipe here we use is the weight of the mushroom green spot to the weight of the growth substrate. the weight to weight ratio is around 10 to 5%. And this is a recommended ratio. So here I will give you an example. So the mushroom growth substrate bag we made usually weighs around 3 pounds. And then we add 100 grams of mushroom green spot to it. So, 100 grams to 3 pounds, the ratio is around 7%. So it's falling into the recommended ratio. So after you add the mushroom green spawn to the mushroom growth substrate, you wanted to seal it to make sure everything inside is clean. So here we use a heat sealing. So after we seal it, I always squeeze the bag a little bit gently, not too hard, to make sure it's safely sealed and make sure there's no leakage. So the next step is incubation and fruiting. So you inoculated the growth substrate and it's ready for the mycelium development. So the incubation stage is pretty easy. So once the bag is ready, you just put them in like any place in your home, but you want to make sure you have a temperature of around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You can put it in your basement, but make sure it's not too cold in the basement. And put them in a place with limited light. You don't want the light shining on the mushroom growth substrate bag. And wait until 3 to 5 weeks to allow the full development of mycelium. And this stage really depends on the mushroom species. Some mushroom species takes less time to have a full development, while some species take more time. So here you can see the white thing here is actually the mushroom mycelium, and the brown things here is the growth substrate. You just wait a couple of weeks, and then you come back and you will find the white mycelium fully wrap over the growth substrate, like the one shown here. You couldn't see any like brown things, and most of the things are white. That means the inoculation is probably complete. Then it's a time to cut off the bag and move to the next stage, which is fruiting. So when you cut open the bag, make sure you clean your tools. And when you cut open the bag, think about that. The temperature gonna drops, right? And then the airflow changed. So it changes to higher oxygen content and a lower carbon dioxide content. And another thing you need is you need to spray them with some water, like a couple of times per day. So both the airflow, both the changes in airflow, the temperature, and the humidity gonna trigger the mushroom fruiting. So in our experiment, we have a small mushroom tent here, and we put the bags in the mushroom tent like here. If you do not have a mushroom tent in your home, it is fine if you just put a shelf in your kitchen, but make sure you have a good temperature, which is around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and give them a good humidity, which is around 85 to 90%. As I said, you can use a spray bottle to spray it spray it a couple of times per day, and also give them a little bit of light. So some growers, like the one shown here, they put the mushroom growth bag in a dark tent, so they block all the natural lights, but they put some Christmas light there, and that Christmas light will guide the mushroom where to grow. So lots of growers like to grow mushrooms because they're niche crop, specialty crop, and they can grow in a limited space, but with lots of yield. And market usually has like higher market price. So the higher market price usually means the high profit. And that's why it kind of extends the mushroom market and the mushroom growing space facilities here. So currently there are 17 mushroom growers in Maryland. There are 2 in Baltimore County, 1 in Baltimore City, and 3 in Prince George's County. So there's 1 in Prince George's County. It's called the Garden International. So they sell the ready-to-grow kit. This is where they already do the grow substrate steps, sterilization steps, and also the inoculation steps. And you just need to cut open and grow it by yourself. And there are also like ready to use sterilized grow substrate kit sold on the market. And you just need to do inoculation, incubation, and fruiting by yourself. But just keep in mind that the ready to use kit is costs more money than you do it by yourself. So this is what I have today for the slide. Are we going to show them the mushroom first, or we let Xuan talk first?
I think show the mushrooms first. Also, we did have a question for you in the chat. Folks asked
Okay.
about using the slow cooker.
Okay.
If they could use the slow cooker to sterilize their.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think so. You can use the slow cooker, but I think Dave can talk a little about this too. And I know slow cooker, you probably need to cook it for a long time to kill everything.
Yeah, you for a slow cooker, you'd want to make sure the temperatures are at least, like 180, something like that within the media. Just so that you make sure that most of those contaminants then will be at a lower level.
All right, thank you. And the rest of the questions, Dave typed in the answers since we're running a little bit over time. So if you did put a question into the Q&A, check out the Q&A again to see your answer. So we're gonna momentarily stop sharing before our last speaker. We have a setup here at SAMREC that we're gonna show you so you can see how we do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch the camera so you can actually see our setup. All right, you can see.
Mushrooms have here. This is already in the fruiting stage. But I want to take one back out for demonstration. So as you can see, this is a lion's mane, and this is our third batch. So we started the first batch a couple of months ago. So be aware of that. The mushroom can fruiting and harvest for a couple of times and last for a couple of months. But the thing is, both the yield and the quality gonna decrease as the harvesting time increase. So Dave grab another lion's mane mushroom so you can see the comparison. The one in Dave's hand is I think it's in first or second batch, so it looks much better than the third batch, right? And another thing about lion's mane is we wanted to show you when it's a good time to harvest the mushroom. So mushroom has different growth stage. So the one in Dave's hand is a little bit younger. So you can harvest them and keep them. But the one in my hand, you can see they flat out, that's older. So now Dave switched to a one that is right at the best harvest.
You can start to see the teeth.
Yeah.
Start to see the teeth form and so forth, and it's still not passed. It hasn't yellowed off or anything like that. It's still pure white. So this is about a half pound.
Yeah, this is our second harvest. So for our first harvest, we can usually get like 1 kilogram, which is around 2 pounds for each bag. And we can
asking if you can use an older mushroom bag as the spawn for a new batch of mushroom bag.
I personally do not recommend that. One reason is the nutrients are used out. The carbons and the nitrogen and other mineral nutrients are already used by the mushroom. Unless you add more nutrients and the carbon in it. Otherwise.
So this is typically what you're going to do. You're going to actually buy, like a bag of spawn. This is a bag of inoculum essentially for this particular species. Then you can break this up, and then you're going to inoculate your other bags with your media and shake them up and sort of mix it through the media. And this is going to give you. You want to use these, within a short period of time so that they're at their peak viability, and you'll get better colonization that way. Once you start using the older bags, that mycelium is sort of like Chen-Wen said, is sort of running out of steam and running out of nutrients.
Yeah, and if you really want to use it, make sure you add a nutrient and make sure you pasteurize it, sterilize it, because you want to make sure the food is clean and safe again.
So here we go. We got some different varieties here. This is a yellow chlorotis or a yellow oyster. Kind of pretty. We have blue, yellow, sort of that pink color. We actually have this. This is the blue oyster here. It's sort of now you can kind of tell, and Chenwei, you can talk about this. How this is an older mushroom. See, it's starting to curl upwards like this.
Yeah. So Dave said the gill is the part where they produce the spots. I wanted them to see the gill.
Mhm.
So can I take this out?
Break it
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. So you can see the mushroom is like it's flats up. The edges flats up. Then that means that's a stage they're already producing the spore. So the spore is coming out from the gill.
They're a little bit older.
Yeah,
Gills this way.
this way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But you see this one? It's not flattened out, So this one is young. You can harvest at this stage. As it grows for a longer time, it's gonna become like this.
And these are younger too.
Yeah, these are younger too.
So this is the Popini, which is another strain of one of the Italian strains. This is a chestnut. This one has a woodsier flavor, kind of a little bit more of a texture to it. Again, these are different choices that you have as far as what you can grow and what you can. So again, gives you a lot more variation and variety than you can just with the button mushrooms and so forth. You're going to have a much different kind of flavor palette here.
Some folks are asking if the lion's mane is also known as chicken of the forest, or if those are different mushrooms.
That's a different
Yep.
one.
I want to show you something else.
You want to play Vanna White here?
So these are something I bring from China. The fun fact is I actually purchased it from Sam's Club in China.
Oh wow.
Interesting, role. This is a morel. Dave said it's
So we
something
collect.
we
You have
cannot.
you can collect these.
Yeah, we cannot grow this.
Not yet.
Cultivate.
Not yet.
Yeah.
And then we actually have some of these others. Again, Asian markets will give you more of a choice sometimes of what you can actually purchase. These stringy ones are the cordyceps. So they're actually tiny little cats, but they've dried down. But again, this is growing on another type of medium. It's growing actually on insect bodies and things like that. So it's more of a it's a different mushroom. It's actually used more medicinally. They usually use extracts of this.
Is it a parasitic? That means it's getting the nutrients from the.
It's growing on the. It's not necessarily parasitic, but it's actually growing on the dead insect bodies. And then some of these are they're dried up. You can use dried mushrooms. You can reconstitute them with water or stock, but these are the woods ears.
Yeah, black eel roots mushroom.
Right.
Yeah, someone was asking how people grow those. That's one of the questions that we
One of
got.
these.
How people grow.
You know what? I haven't grown these, so I don't know how to do the woods ears. And the cordyceps is a little more complicated. We can't grow the morels, but I haven't grown the woods ears, so I can't answer that one. I'd have to look that one up, or we'd have to work on that one a little bit.
Yeah. But for all of this, when I consume, it's dried. Everything's dried. So I think that's the value added.
Good storage.
Yeah, value added of processed processed products, which has a higher market value. So how you consume it is you soak them in the water, and then you can fry them or saute them or cook them with the soup. And I also wanted to show our. Do we need to show the biosafety food or?
Well, that's not something they're gonna have.
Okay, yeah, so this pretty much what we have here. So we make the growth substrate, and then we cook them with Bob's barrel, and then we put them in the mushroom tent. We inoculate them first in the biosafety food, and then we put them in the mushroom tent for incubation. And after a couple of weeks, we cut the bags open and then put them back to the mushroom coops again. And this is hooked with a humidifier. So the white one here is a humidifier. So when you open it will provide the perfect humidity to the mushroom. So for the fruiting stage, it really needs high humidity, high water content. If you don't have this mushroom tent at home, that's fine. You can have a small container and put the mushroom bag inside, but make sure you need to also give them good air circulation, because at the fruiting stage, they also need higher oxygen content. And too much carbon dioxide gonna prohibit the mushroom growth. If you just want to keep the mushroom bag in the open space like this on the table, that's fine. Just use a spray bottle and spray them a couple of times a day. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, so we have one speaker left to wrap up our presentation today. We are excited to welcome Xuan Wei, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the numbers involved in growing mushrooms. Xuan, would you like to share your slides, or would you like me to share them for you?
Yeah, please share your slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to go back to our presentation, folks. Just give me one moment to get that started. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. So my name is Xuan Wei. I'm the Extension Specialist for Urban Farm and Agribusiness Management. So my colleagues Dave and Chen Wen already introduced about the production, cultivation of mushrooms. So I'm going to talk about the numbers of mushrooms. So before I dive into the numbers, so I do want to show you a quick screenshot about the Google trends of searching for specialty mushroom. So here it shows the trends of interest over the time from 2004 up to the end of September now, how people are interested in specialty mushrooms. So we can see that there's a few sparks here and there, but I don't know if you can see it or not, but after January 2020, we see frequent search of specialty mushroom. So their value 100 on the vertical axis is not an absolute value, it's a relative peak search of specialty mushroom. So it's a relevant measure. So we can see there was a peak search in 2010, then we have more frequent search after January 2020. I was wondering if this was partially due to the COVID-19. People get more interested in growing specialty mushrooms, but we can see that there was more frequent search of specialty mushroom website. Next slide, please. Yeah, so typically for a major urban farmer clientele, I would tell them that because you are serious thinking about of growing mushroom as your business, so making profits would be the top priority. But for you guys, I want you to tell me why you're interested in growing specialty mushrooms at home. So if you can type the reasons, I have a list here. So if you can type one, it doesn't have to be one reason, but like you have multiple reasons you want to grow at home, please, yeah, put the numbers in the chat so I know. So what would be the primary reason for you to grow mushroom at home? Okay, I see a lot of ones like me. I'm a big fan of mushroom. It's simply something that I want to eat every day. Yeah, I also see their numbers. It's, yeah, money is one thing as the inflation, and then 7 is you want to experimenting, right? Doing mushroom on your own, and then yes, growing mushroom, it's easy to start. You literally need a very small space to start. Yeah, and yeah, freshness, that you don't have to go to grocery store. You can literally harvest mushroom and then put it into the pot and it all shows up on your dinner plate. Yeah. And yeah, it's a relaxing hobby. You enjoy the process of growing mushroom. So yeah, I also see some answers. Yeah, it's harder to find a quality fresh mushroom in grocery store, so you can completely control the process of growing mushroom on your. Yes, I also see the medical value as Dave mentioned. I personally I enjoy eating mushroom also because of the medical value of mushroom. So yeah, so we have a lot of reasons of growing mushroom on our own that I assumed that we have a lot of our beginners here. So in my next slide I showed some mushroom grow kit. In my next slide, yeah. So if you really start from beginning, so you might want to buy or purchase some mushroom grow kit. You can purchase them online through Amazon, or you can also purchase mushroom grow kit from our local mushroom growers. So these are just a few examples. They can be very simple or a little bit complicated, and the price also depends on the mushroom varieties that you are going to grow. So based on my search, the price of a mushroom grow kit varies from $20 up to $50. My suggestion would be start with easy to grow mushroom varieties, like Dave just said, start with oyster mushroom and gradually increase the level of difficulty. Next slide, please. So as I am a agriculture economist, and I would say, even if you want to grow mushroom as a hobby, there's still some economics considerations that you want to put in your mind. So depends on your scale. You might just want to start with small scale or grow on your countertop, or you might want to be a little bit aggressive or rigorous. I want to start with a little bit larger scale. So there are two component, economics component you want to consider. The first is the startup costs. You need to purchase some equipment to grow mushroom at home. And then the second component you need to consider is the operation cost. The startup cost is also, we call it fixed cost. So regardless you're going to grow or not in the future, once you purchased the equipment, it's fixed. And the operation cost is something that it goes as you grow. So like substrates, as long as you grow mushroom, you will need to keep purchasing substrate, right? Next slide, please. So here is a list of fixed costs that I often provide to our small urban growers. Since they are thinking of business, they need to start with of space. But I think for you guys, the major components that you need to spend on would be grow tent, the racks, and the climate control or monitor. As Dave mentioned, you need to monitor the humidity and the temperature of your grow tent. So I think these consist of your major investment or money you need to spend on growing mushroom if you consider a relatively large scale at home. Next slide, please. So here I provide some examples. See, the 450 luxury set is what Chen Wen showed that we have at a SEMREC to do our trials. You can purchase it from North Sport. Again, I'm not advertising for any of them. I'm just providing some sources that you may be considering to purchase from. And the shelf we purchased from our Uline, I think the cost is roughly $185. And then we purchased the tent from Vivson is roughly $100. These are some money you will have to spend if you want to go a little bit larger scale. Next slide, please. Now, after you invest these equipment, you need to purchase substrate. you need to purchase spawn, right? These are the major, I would say, operation costs, variable costs that you need to spend on. It depends on the variety you are going to grow, but I would say please start with the easy one, oyster mushroom. Next slide, please. Now, here's some real numbers for economics. So regardless the varieties that you are going to grow, we have some very conservative numbers that our extension agents or faculty members estimate. So for a 10-pound of grain spawn, it will cost around $30 to $50. This includes shipping cost. Of course, there's a range because it depends on where you purchase from. Either you purchase online or purchase from local, and the cost varies a bit. For us, we purchase from our local growers, so I think our cost is roughly around $35 to purchase a 10-pound of grain spawn. So now, for 10-pound of spawn, we can inoculate roughly 150 to 300 pounds of substrate. With this amount of substrate, a rough estimate is we can produce 30 to 6 pounds of mushrooms. Now let's consider the case of you purchase 10 pounds of spawn, spending $30. So what is the spawn cost per pound of mushroom? Do a little bit of calculation. So 10 pounds of spawn, $30, which can produce 30 to 6 pounds of mushroom. So the cost per pound of mushroom is roughly 50 cents to $1, right? So this is the number that you want to keep in mind. But again, this number is from our commercial grower. So if you want to do inoculating on your own, you purchase grain spawn and do all the process. You need to have this idea. For commercial, it's roughly 50 cents to $1. But for you, it might be a little bit expensive because you are literally operating at a very small scale. And then we can see that the cost of block per mushroom block is around $4.50 to $7.50. So again, it's because of our scale of economies. It varies a little bit. And then when I'm talking about the revenue, again, this is for our urban farmers who are in mushroom business, but this will give you a rough estimate of the cost of production and the money that you pay to purchase mushroom. So on average, we say a 5-pound block will produce 1 pound of mushrooms. And in your own case, you may be able to produce 1 pound. Typically, the grow tool size is 3 pounds to 5 pounds. So you may be able to harvest 1 pound of mushroom. You may not. Or if you are really good at growing mushroom, you might be able to produce 1 pound half or like 2 pounds. So think of a grow kit price is ranging from $20 to $50, and your yield is around 1 to 2 pounds. You need to think of this price, right? Is it a really worse growing at home, or it's actually better to purchase from a grocery store or at a farmer's market? But again, you are going to have very fresh mushrooms if you grow at home, right? It's literally the moment that you harvest, you can cook immediately. Here is some estimates based on USDA 2025 report. So the average price of specialty mushroom is $5.83. And if we break down, because there are so many different specialty mushrooms and the USDA only collects data on two major and they group all others in the other category, we can see that shiitake is a little bit more pricey at a price of $6.23, and oyster is $5.18, and all the other together is roughly $5.80. Now, these are the farm gate price, or I would say wholesale price. But if you are a little bit aggressive and you are thinking of, if I can success growing at home, I might want to go business in the future. It really depends on the market channel where you sell your price. You can sell your mushroom at $7 to $20 per pound, depending on where you say, and it can go much higher if you are lucky enough to find a gourmet restaurant who's willing to purchase. And it also depends on the variety, the cultivar of your mushroom that you grow. So this is pretty much I have for you guys to think of growing mushroom at home. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so thank you so much, Sean, and thank you to Dave and Chen Wen, also to all of our presenters today.